Welcome to week 100. Um, and today I'm going to try something I haven't done in the past, and I'll talk about it in a second, but let me kind of recap the past 99 weeks. So the reason I started this March of 2020, and the primary reason I began it was we were all shut down pretty much. We were all in pandemic. And I just kind of felt like I was isolated, just like everyone else was isolated. And I know I paint a lot. I paint for students, I paint for myself. And so I thought, let's just do a painting, a 90-minute painting, because generally that's hard for a lot of people to watch longer than 90 minutes, unless you're a fellow artist, and then you could probably watch forever. So we started with week 1, and then the Academy of Art, who I teach for, and I'm the department director of in the painting department, said, geez, we'd like to jump on board and kind of show this to our students along with, the rest of the world that you're kind of doing this for. I said, absolutely fine. And that's when people like Scott joined us to begin to help us with this, endeavor. And it's been going on. And I really have no end in sight. People keep asking me, when are you going to stop? And I'm right now, don't have plans for it. We know we're going to work on through the summer, doing whatever, maybe kind of getting a water-based piece in, which I've never tried large. I've only done them on location, quite small. Like 1114 is probably the largest that I've done. So along the way, the other thing is that I like painting kind of almost everything. I hate use that word almost, because I'm sure there's things I don't. I love painting animals. I like painting people. I like painting old barns, and I like painting cities. I like painting in Europe a lot. Obviously, I do a couple workshops here or there, so it's pretty obvious that I love painting there. And everything from a tree to cliffs to the ocean. Can't forget the ocean. Since we live about, where do we live? We live about 25 minutes from the Sonoma coast. And so usually most of the ocean paintings I've done have been along the Sonoma coast. But with all that in mind, the whole idea was to kind of just do what I do when I teach, when I demonstrate, when I teach, not when I walk up and help people individually, but when I demonstrate. And that is, as you probably have realized, I usually don't shut up. I talk what I'm thinking all the way through it. And a couple of reasons for that. One of the reasons is I learned when I was in art school by watching, and a lot of times the people that I was watching didn't tell me what they were doing. And so I'm trying to get inside their head and try and figure out what they're thinking as they're putting these things down. And so when I started demonstrating, I kind of, at first I didn't know what the heck I was doing in 1974. And at that time I was teaching down south in pretty much mainly in acrylics, not that many oil. But I felt like it was important to let people know what I was thinking as I was mixing a color or as I was putting a brush stroke down. And each year I've kind of gotten a little bit more involved in how difficult the technical process is of painting, which is pretty much what we're dealing with here. We're not dealing with a lot of the intellectual process, but we're dealing with a lot of the technical process, which is something that everyone has to overcome before you get into doing what it is specifically you want to do, whether it's figurative, whether it's portrait, whether it's landscape, whether it's plein air, whether it's anything of that nature. So that's basically what's happened over the past 99 weeks. So today, as you might be able to tell, this is 40 by 30. Just to give you a scale idea, last week I did an 18 by 24, and I've done a couple that are a little larger, but that's the scale of last week's. Okay, so you can see right there. So it's quite a bit larger, which just means I'm going to be working with a heck of a lot larger brushes and covering as much territory as I can. Then I've done some that are 24-30, which is this scale. No, I'm sorry, 24-24. So you can see there is a scale difference. And the largest kind of has been around the 2430s, which has been somewhat challenging too. But still, you can see it's a little over half the size. So with that in mind, I decided I would go back to my archives and kind of revisit my past as a painter. And when I first started showing in galleries, I was doing a lot of these my daughter's friends, young girls on the beach. So the only photo I was able to find from that vintage, which is probably the 1980s, was, and not even probably, was the 1980s, was this. Or it might have been early 90s. I can't even tell. Now, this has got great gesture, but it does not have great value. So hopefully what I can do is show you the importance of amplifying value contrast and color a little bit. And that's basically what I'm going to do in this piece. So we're going to try and get it done in an hour and a half, but if we have to, we'll go an hour and 45. We'll just see because of the scale. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with that kind of horizon, which is going to be kind of in here. And I've mixed up a little brown. And what did I throw in the brown this time? I threw a little bit of a burnt sienna. And we're just going to kind of get kind of this background in a little bit as to where we're going to put it.
You mention your palette.
I will mention the palette.
All right.
Pretty much this is a standard palette that I've been using. The only thing I added this time was Prussian blue. So it's titanium white, Naples yellow, yellow ochre, cat orange hue, a little bit of alizarin crimson thrown down there, ultramarine blue, a little bit of Prussian blue, sap green, asphaltum, and burnt sienna. Okay, with that in mind. So we're gonna get the young ladies in. I want to get the top of their heads. We have the shorter one. Now, both of these young girls, I still think they're young girls, but they're in their mid-30s now. In fact, this young lady I'm drawing is getting her PhD right now in San Diego. And the lady on the right is working with her husband, a photographer, and they have a beautiful little baby. Or I have two little kids, I think.
No, just one boy.
Is it just one? Okay. Well, we just saw a few weeks ago.
He's grown.
And live in San Diego. Now the beach here, this is Southern California beach, somewhere between Malibu and Santa Barbara. And we're just looking for gesture and proportion. Just enough marks down so that I can begin to make sense out of it. And I will correct. You know, I was with the class on location in Sausalito, and I kept saying to everybody as we were working from a little fountain there, and I kept saying to everybody, just go for it. Pretend, you know, I used my line, pretend like you know what you're doing. But always keep in mind that you're probably off somewhat. You know, maybe not, but you probably are. And with that, you're better to do that than to be this little timid artist that is afraid to put a mark down, because you don't accomplish anything. And at the end, your timidity shows. So you're better to be aggressive and just assume you're going to be, oh, I assume this is right. And then as you assess your piece, as it's progressing, if it's off, that's when you go back and you adjust it. I mean, if you notice it right away, you can adjust it, but you don't want to spend all your time adjusting too soon. And at each level, you're correcting. You're not just adding. As you add, you correct. So we're going to kind of indicate as much as we can and get right into the painting, because I just don't want to spend too long. It's beautiful, a little wet. It looks like it's wet. I'm pretty sure it is. I don't think the girls were in the beach this day, but they might have been playing around with each other and gotten each other a little bit wet. But in any event, and I know sometimes these two young ladies actually watch these things. So if you're watching, here you are. Probably 25 years ago. We're just kind of working on proportions and angles. Angles create gesture. All right. The length of these things, like one of the hardest lengths to measure is from here, shoulder, down to the bottom of the dress, because it's a long way. So what you look for along the way is what I call landmarks. Landmarks would be the cuffs. This cuff is a little lower than that cuff. All right. Then you come down from there and you find the little opening between the waist and the arm. And then you look down further and you find where the hand intersects the dress. These are all landmarks. They're elements you can use to check your distances, because the longer that distance is, the more difficult it is. So if we can figure that foot out. That's a little tricky. A little tricky on that foot. Angle up slightly. Then she's got this nice flare of the dress. So part of it is being bunched up by her hand right here. And then the other part flows. We're going to come down on this leg. Now, if I were doing a studio refined finish painting, I would probably spend about, I would say, an hour, maybe even longer, on the accuracy of the drawing. In this case, it's more, once again, it's more like painting from life or plein air, where you know you'll have only X amount of time to work. So we've got the two girls laid in. The water line appears to be about here, the surf line here, and that comes up. And then it's up high. And I like this little bounce. And I'm bringing it out a little further than it is at this point. The other thing that I've done that you might have noticed is I leveled out the horizon, or the water line back there. So that's it. There's going to be some reflection because it's wet sand. So let's move. I'm going to start with a 1.5 inches today. An inch. I've got my inch brushes and my 1.5 inches to start with, mainly because we got to cover a lot of territory. So first thing I'm going to get in is the sky, which is basically a white that has just a hint of color in it, and the color tends to be slightly blue. So I just put way too much in. A little bit of Prussian, but Prussian's so green, I'm going to throw some ochre into it. That looks pretty good right about there. So since I'm not really tall, I've got to reach. We're going to just get the sky in as fast as we can. And a lot of the darks are going to be laid in kind of like almost underpainting, transparent, which some artists love and other artists want. I know I have a couple friends that are artists that go, well, you're not finishing off the painting. Well, part of that is what your intent is. One artist's finish is another artist's overwork. And as I've always said, I still use this line a lot. And the reason I use it is because there's so many different directions in painting. Is good is good. All right. If it's good, loose, beautiful abstraction, it can be really good. If it's good expressionism, it can be good. If it's good photorealism, it can be good. It's all, if it's done well, That's all that really matters. Next thing we're going to do is going to lay those kind of cliffs in. We don't want them really dark, but I don't want them obviously light. So I'm starting with the asphaltum in white. And it's a little bit too much red. So I am actually going to take a little blue and cool it, a little ultramarine this time. The reason I'm not using Prussian, Prussian's really powerful blue. This looks like a pretty good start. Yeah, it is. So I'm going to add some turp to it so I can get it to really go on quickly. And we're just going to kind of be a little concerned about the edge. Let me get back for a second. I've left a path because of the scale of this piece. I cannot see all of it at once. So in that regard, the stepping back, which I always advocate, is just crucial. But we need to get a tone in here. So it's kind of a semi-transparent, mid-dark. You like all those adjectives in it? Semi-transparent, mid-dark. As opposed to transparent, dark. It's semi-transparent. It's not quite transparent, and it's not quite dark.
Yes.
I want those edges to be kind of free and not fussed at. So I got to reach. Nothing wrong with reaching. Still running out of paint. So I constantly remixing generally anyway. So sometimes the right color, sometimes the wrong color. In rocks, I don't care. I just want it to be close. It's a little more blue than I want, so I bring a little bit more brown into it if I want a little bit more white, kind of mellow out that brown. And we'll take it right in here. And if any of those strokes show it, to me, it's okay. You know, because what you're doing is you're laying the foundation, and a lot of the foundation remains as you progress onto any degree of refinement. A lot of the foundation remains. So it's not like I'm going to be covering every ounce, every inch of this as we move towards completion. Some of it's going to stay really brushy, underdone like this, which if you look at some of the great masters, at least of the 1800s, a lot of them will have areas that, for all intents and purposes, someone wouldn't consider necessarily finished off. So we're going to go there. Next thing I'm going to do is kind of get an approximation of that water and of what that water is like as far as value goes. It's darker than the sky. So we're just going to start with the sky color. And see, right now I'm going to run through white like there's no tomorrow. Okay, I think I'm kind of close. A little more colorful, but I like it. So let's get it in there.
Ah.
A little more colorful than I was planning. But you know what? Some of that's going to work really well. This is an 1.5 inch brush, so it's a little bigger than you've seen me using up above. Oh, I'm getting some nice nuance. We're gonna have a lot of more lights in here too. A lot of lights are going to sit on top of this. So what I probably should be doing is adding medium, because it'll help it set up a little bit as we move along. Okay, we're going to keep it at that. Let's go back up, kind of go around the figure, but don't necessarily worry about whether you're going into the figure or not. Back in here, I know I'm going to come in lighter or a little bit probably darker and more colorful. And let's move down. We want to cover all this territory. And I've done even bigger on location than this. And I use these size brushes because you want to cover as much territory as you possibly can as early as you can, so that your time can be spent fixing, refining, and completing. And that's why these large brushes work really well in the beginning. They really do. Some people just don't feel comfortable with them. I didn't either until a couple of years ago, I was watching a video by a gentleman named Ken Knight. And I just happened, wasn't a complete video, just a little part of one, but I saw him painting, he's painting in Australia, and he's using these like house painting brushes. And it just had such a wonderful flow. I went, I gotta try that. So the closest I had to something like that were these gesso brushes, and they worked. And I tried, and the more I used them, the more I liked them, particularly in the beginning. As you can see, we're going to lighten it up as we go down just a little bit. But you can see we can get a lot of this stuff in here quickly and effortlessly. And the whole idea, remember I've used this line, anybody that's watched these over the past 99 demos, you've seen a few of them, I always say, and this is a personal choice, by the way. It's not that everyone has to paint like this. I tend to like paintings where it looks like the paint almost fell off the brush and the artist did not have to, completely drain himself with trying to complete the painting. So with that in mind, I'm going to leave that alone for a second. And I'm going to go back to the smaller brush, and we're going to start to get the shadows of these outfits in. And the reason I almost always start with shadows, the shadows slightly darker. I'm going to make it a lot darker because I want more value contrast. I want the readability to be even more. So I'm going to start with white. I have a little residue of the brown in my brush, but not a lot. A little medium because I want it to flow. Some ultramarine blue. And the dress, you probably even can't see this, the outfit on the left has a lot more violet into it than the outfit on the right. Therefore, I'm adding ultramarine and alizarin. This might be a little too dark. Let me give it a shot. No, it's not. Oh, I almost like it. We go a little darker. A little more red, a little more blue. Red meaning alizarin. Okay, let's give it a shot. Let's get that arm in. So I've enhanced the color, and I've also enhanced the value. Enhanced in terms of value, meaning I've darkened it. I want to step back for a second. Okay, it reads. That's all I needed to do. Get back far enough to make sure I was getting enough contrast, which I am. So we're going to kind of get the rest of that arm in. Now that I know it's working. That's kind of important what I just said. Now that I know that it's working. All right. The reason I said that, I don't want to sit and paint the whole thing in, then step back and go, oh, it's not dark, it's not colorful enough, it's not whatever. So initially, I want, after one or two strokes, I want to make sure it's working. If it's not, then I wasted all that time laying the whole thing in. Just kind of lightly brush it in here. There's a lot of light happening on this at the end, but don't worry about that now. You don't want to worry. You over worry the completion of the figure too soon. Two things can happen. Number one, you can overwork it. And number two, it feels disjointed from the rest of your painting. It doesn't feel like it fits. It's as comfortable. And as that sleeve goes down, I see it get more red. So I brought a little bit, believe it or not, of burnt sienna into it. It's probably too red, but I'm enhancing the color and I'm enhancing the value. Okay, go back to this and let's get it all in. Now I'm going to stand back. Geez, I like the color. I don't know if it's going to look good when it's done, but I sure like the color now. The light. That just arbitrarily picked up a little too much white there. And that happens. And you just go back and remix colors and don't worry about if they're exactly what you want, knowing that you're probably going to change it and augment it to a degree as you move along. So we move down, get some of this in. This gets warmer, I can see over here, and it will, but right now we have enough of this laid in where I'm feeling somewhat confident. Somewhat is about all I ever feel. I never am I'm one of these guys that I always assume that it's okay, but I know I can do better. Okay, let's do the dress on the right. Then we're going to get the hair in. We're going to get all the shadows in, so we get the darks reading. Now this on the right has a little more aqua in it. So again, back to my white without cleaning the brush because I still have this. And aqua is going to be closer to the Prussian because it's got more green in it. And I want the values pretty much the same. So I'm mixing this color right next to the previous color to make sure my values are about right. That looks okay to me. Again, later on, I may not feel it's okay. Right now, I feel like it's okay. I know I can go greener. I can tell that right off the bat. I'm going to stand back. Once again, I want to check it because I don't want to paint the whole damn thing in and realize I don't like it. So I'm going to add some more ochre. Whoa, too much to it because I want a little bit more green. And that's an adjustment. And I'm glad I stood back. That's a little more green right there. So we're going to just take that, move it up into that color. Get a little bit of that sleeve in. And we're just amplifying these shadows or strengthening them. And I might be remiss in calling them shadows. I would in turn refer to them as the shadow side because they're really not full-on shadows. Because it's still receding. And the reason this has so much blue is sky. It's got a lot of skylight in it. Now, I can make these even stand up further when I add lights back into the water. And I will do that before I refine too much towards the edge of their dresses. Reason being, if I do it at the very end, I'm going to mess them up. So we want to get as much of this underpainting in as we can and make the underpainting work. Hope you understand what I mean by work. And maybe I should be clear. In terms of value and color, I want it to be pretty accurate. Now I can see it get a little warmer down here. Sometimes you got to watch out because you can almost see bathing suits when people are like this, and I can see it, so I'm ignoring it. I'm sure you probably cannot see that on the screen. It just obviously it's quite a bit smaller. Have to squat down for that, huh? And go back and pick up some of those violets because I can see it get warmer in here and a little darker. But just the heck of it, a little bit of that violet color there and down about here. And that's just showing the difference in the form of their body underneath. A little darker up in here. There's a lot of interesting changes. They're really kind of fun. And same over here, lighter, warmer. So by pushing my brush down, I'm pulling the brown and the light out of the ferrule, and I'm getting a little bit of it going on in here. And we'll just kind of leave that alone because we're just about where we want to be now. Okay, let's kind of push the hair. Hair, let's stay with that size brush, but I'm going to use a clean one because I'm going to go darker and I don't want to have to go back. So I just took up more brown, a little blue, mixed it back into the rock color. Now, the darkest dark in this specific piece is her hair, and I like it. I do like it. It's as dark as this, but I'm not going to paint this anywhere near as dark as this. Be a little more careful now. Edges. Also, I see a little bit more red in her hair. A little bit. So I brought some, there we go. I brought a little bit of burnt sienna into that color. Burnt sienna's got a lot of red in it. I don't know if you guys noticed, but since I've been doing these for 99 weeks, beginning of doing a lot of these, I was not using a lot of burnt sienna. And over the course, I've become a little bit more dependent upon it. And that happens. It's happened with other colors. So being a little more careful about that edge. Probably shouldn't worry too much because I know I've got to paint the water behind and I'm probably going to mess up things. But if I can get it feeling correct, which is all you're doing in the beginning, feels pretty much like you're right on the money. Okay, that looks pretty good. Same color, I'm going to bring ochre into it. Her hair is what you might call more of a dark blonde. So somewhere in that range. Brown, blue, little ochre. Those are the three colors I'm using for that. I'm leaving a little bit of edge at the top because she's getting a really beautiful, cool, almost a slightly green light on the top of her hair. And blonde will, it's amazing how with blonde hair very often you can find cools in it really easily, more so than dark hair. Okay, so we're going to go down, we're going to kind of pick up light touch. So you just barely touch your brush down. Why? Because I'm painting hair. And it comes down about that far into her arm. If I mess up her arm, fine, your arm isn't finished anyway. Okay, I stood back and I gave it my approval. So we're going to keep moving. A lot of times you can't sit on a painting that you're going to do this large and this fast. You can't sit and go, well, it's not quite right, I think I'll fix it. No, you can't do that. You've got to keep moving. At the end, if something really bothers you, fix it. Comes all the way down about in here. Okay. Little light touch. One of the things that I know you cannot see on screen is the fact that I'm just barely putting the brush down. And I noticed this in my class on Wednesday on location when they were watching me do a demo. They said, God, you're just barely touching that brush. I said, yeah, because I don't want it to be really bold at this. When you want it bold, push it down. But when you want a nice, sensitive kind of edge, soft kind of quality, just let your brush barely, I'm not even feeling it touching the canvas. Okay, get a little bit more. I'm standing back. Overall, it's feeling okay. Now we want to get the shadows and the flesh tones in. And they're really very little up in here. It's more on the legs and arms. So I'm going to go to a smaller brush. What size? Oh, let's take a number. How about an 8? An 8, kind of an old 8 flat. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of find the shadow. Now, because I've deepened this, I have to deepen these shadows. The shadow relationship, I'm not going to look at that. I'm going to look at that because it's darker. So I have to make sure and paint it darker. It's darker and it's slightly warmer. The key is slightly. So I'm using burnt sienna. I'll let that in with that brown. I don't want it too colorful. So I'm going to maybe add a touch of ultramarine to it, and then I'm going to test it. I'm going to add a touch more ultramarine. It actually looks pretty good. I darkened it. Let's try it again. A little darker. That's good enough. And I still have that. So I don't want to sit there and make it all perfect right now because I still have this whole background to paint, and I know I'm going to mess the feet up. So I'd be really wasting my time and energy making it all perfect. And then that means that I have to paint around it so carefully that I'll never complete the painting. Or in the time that I'm trying to complete it, let's put it that way. Same with the other legs. They're very similar in value. kind of goes up. We see through the dress a little bit, so it just got a little stroke in there. Entire calf is covered. Come back at the side of the foot. The feet are going to get quite abstracted. Have to be very careful. I'll lean this again. I was leaning against the pallet, pushing the. This is so big so that I could get it on camera. I had to bring it down and put it pretty much on my table. That's pretty good. What you want this to look like at this particular time is a very loose version of what the finish will look like. Throw a little more blue into that leg because I see it. I just went too far with it. Let's try it again. Throw a little bit more red back into it. That's good. And a little more ochre to lighten it up just a little bit. We'll have it. There we go. Little burnt sienna, a little white mixed right in with that color. A little more burnt sienna, and we'll have her heel and her ankle and the other side of her Achilles. And then this foot comes down about here. Okay, so we've got very loose, and that arm is going to be very similar. So thankfully, I already have the color mixed up. Boom. What do? Put the arm in. Little more blue in it. Because I had blue darkened, so I have to add a little white. You know, I might be wrong in my color guessing too. That's the other thing. That's why I use that line all the time. Because the way I paint is, I paint like I'm doing it right. And I keep in mind, I might be doing it wrong. That arm, and then it warms up. So pick up more of the, not enough. Let's try this. Not enough. Trying the cat orange hue mixed into it. That did it. Nice edge on the arm. Same with this side of the arm, it gets a little darker. So if I can do it now, great. If it doesn't work, we'll go back and fix it later. A little bit more red towards the hand, so a little bit more burnt sienna. And we get one hand, and we get a thumb. No, picked up too much of the background. Thumb, okay. And a little thumb right there. And we'll get that hand. So we have the feeling of the hands, the feet, a little bit on the neck. It's going to get a little cooler because it's facing upward. The sky, so it's facing more that direction. So that's pretty close. I just mixed that back in with kind of the dress color. And we'll get the there, and then warms up down around here. I think I've probably mentioned to you guys, I've always considered myself much more of a figurative painter than I have a landscape painter. But over the course of the years, I've really become to embrace and really enjoy landscape. And part of it was because of this specific theme. When I was first painting and I was doing this on the beach, one of the things that I did was I dealt with figures, as I always wanted to, but I also dealt with environment. And I began to realize, I remember when I was a student in school, I realized I could paint a pretty decent figure by the time I was graduating. But that figure had to be somewhere. And you know, that became a little more of a problem because I had put all my energy into learning how to do a figure and not worrying. So I could do a figure against a blue wall. I could do a figure against a green wall. But to put a figure in a specific environment, you know, whether it was an interior or whether it was an exterior, that was something that I had to work at. And to a degree, illustration helped a little bit because it forced me to put figures in specific environments. So now we're going to go in and we're going to try and hit some of the lights. Okay, First thing let's do is let's go in. I'm not going to go in on the dresses yet on the lights because that's kind of what I'm going to do at the end. But I am going to look into the dresses for other color value variations. Start on the left. Yeah, I want to only give myself a certain amount of time. I see a little warmer, darker color there, and I'm using this brush, which might be a mistake, but only because of its scale, not because it's a bad brush, because I'm not covering as much territory as I possibly could. Underside of the arm, all these areas get a little darker. If they get warmer, I'm throwing probably a little burnt sienna into it. That's probably a little too dark warm, but right now I'm going to live with it. We're going to stay with some of the areas in here, and then we're going to put some lights in on this dress too. And these areas tend to have a little bit more warmth. So I've mixed a little bit more of the alizarin. And every time I paint into that color, keep in mind, I am picking up that color. What does that mean? That means I probably have to go back and replenish the pigment on my brush. A lot of times the interior part, right in here, right as it goes inside, it's warmer because a skylight can't get to it. So take it right here and push it. That was a little too dark. So all I did is I added a second stroke, pushed it right back into the color. I'm standing back. You guys obviously can't see me, but I am standing back quite often. Every time I put a stroke or two down, a little darker. And for this, I'm using burnt sienna and a little bit of brown. And it's because I see it that way. I see it warm, very warm, actually. Okay, I just step back again. I'm going to go into the other way. Well, I've got that color. A little bit more burnt sienna because I see it get quite right underneath. That's too dark. So what you do, one more time, and it pushes it right back into the color. And a little bit, I'm going to get a little bit more intensity into that color. A little bit of the, there we go. Try this. Take that. Okay. So I'm going to move into this dress because I got to keep moving back and forth. It's going to stay, again, recesses are going to get slightly warmer. So right at that sleeve, not warm enough. Maybe add a little alizarin to that color. We're going to pull it up. And we're going to take the other side. I see it right here. And then there's some subtleties. And for that, I added a little bit more blue to that color. Lighten it just a little bit, and we're going to start painting some of the subtleties. So I'm painting, for lack of kind of shadow. They're not darks. They're like mid-tone darks. Little bluer over there. Here. There we go. Add a little bit. A little bit blue. Push it. Just in the recesses. If you see it get warmer, add warm. If you see it get cooler, add cool. And you know what? Guess. If you can't tell, guess. Don't go, oh, I don't know if it's warm. Oh, it's more neutral. I mean, I've had students say, well, how purple is that? Hell, truthfully, I don't know how purple it is. I see it as darker, maybe with a little bit of a violet leaning, but I don't necessarily call it. I call everything kind of, at this stage, everything is kind of grays. That's how I see it. Somebody else may see it differently. I see them all as a variation of grays. Warm grays, cool grays, with approximate value that is correct. I'm much more concerned about the value, much more. So when people sometimes will ask, is that purple? Is that, my first question is, how dark is it? How light is it? Is it dark enough? Do you have it too dark? Don't over worry color. Your color will naturally come if you keep working at it. You keep working at it, your feeling for your specific love of color will emerge. Okay, we're going to move down in here. Let's go back to this. And over gets warmer. Too dark. I'm not sure that color is warm or cool. It's got more yellow in it. The way I'm putting it down, I'm not sure. I'm not absolutely positive that's right, but the value is right. So that's probably a little too dark. So push it right back into the paints and that'll lighten it. Okay, I want to go a little warmer, bring some more. We want to get down in here. We want to bring that down. Want to get warmer still. Bring that down about here. Brush it out a little bit. Bring that down a little bit more. Push that up. And a little bit more violets, I see. But value, close value. Everything's very close value here. Nothing is jumping out. If it jumps out, then you're wrong. Just a little stronger than I wanted. That's pretty good. By the time I get a few more of these darks in, subtle darks, a little bluer over here, start to pick up the movement, and a little too dark too fast. Thankfully, I've got this nice wet paint down that I can push it down into. And in doing so, here too, it pulls from right here. Goes that way. Some subtleties. More subtleties. I'm looking for the pulls. All pulls up to this point, right here. A little vacant in here. A little bit of a waistband we're seeing, just a little bit, but some of that's gonna be the lights that we're gonna put in. And that's about what I'm ready to do. That's why I wanted to get far enough along in this area so I can start to put some, what you might think of as subtle lights back into these dresses. Because the majority of the painting is the dresses. All right, the majority of the painting is not the faces, it's the dresses. So that's knowing that's where we have to put our time. So I'm going to clean that brush for a little bit because I'm going to stay with the same brush, and I'm actually going to start adding some aquas into this dress. So I'm going back to the Prussian. I'm going to bring a little bit of the ochre and the white into it. Ochre. Actually, I'm grabbing just a little bit here and there of the Naples. Let me test it first. No, not light enough. Added a lot of medium because I'm starting to paint into a lot of wet paint. That's good enough. Let me step back. No, it's not. It needs to be a little lighter. And I probably could use more ultramarine in that, not so much green. So I added more ultramarine and more white. Let's do it again because I don't have time to. Yeah, that's better. A little bit of pull right in here. The whole side of this. Okay, that's a good color. I can live with that color at least. Let's, to say it's a good color, I don't know, but it's a color that I don't feel uncomfortable about leaving. Standing back. Okay, it's shaping up. It's coming out slowly, which is the way I want it to come out. We're going to hit a little bit of a and Now, people have accused me of being, well, that's Joaquin Sorolla. And then my answer is damn right. Hell yes. It's not, he was probably the first one that I'm aware of that did a lot of the young ladies on the beach in white. And so absolutely, that's what I'm doing. One of the great things about painting white is you get a lot of color into the shadows. And so I'm not copying a Sorolla, but I am using his subject matter. There's not a question about that. So if some of you are going, well, it's kind of like a Sorolla, you're damn right. And you know what? I'll take that as a compliment. Because it is. It is a compliment. If you think, if you're equating this up to that level of expertise, then big, nice, bold brushwork. Which is, for me, kind of fun, because if I were doing a studio painting of this, I'd probably be fussing with it way more. And I kind of like some of the decisions that I've made, even though I don't know if they're right or not, but they're okay. And gotta keep moving. I'm looking at the time. I know I'm gonna go past 1:30. So I'm kind of informing Scott, because he said if I needed to go longer, I could. And the main reason I want to get these, I mean, I could move on to other areas, but literally I want to get these dresses. This is really what this painting is more about than anything else. So I'd really like them to be done well and as complete as I can make it within the time frame without really going crazy and going way over the time frame. And these are the areas that I'm fussing with more. Say, for it was when I move into the background, I'm not going to be as fussy. So I probably won't develop it as far. That's about all we're going to get on that dress right now. It's a little bit empty right in here, and there's a little bit more subtlety happening right down in right in that area. So let's go to the other dress and do the same. What I just did to this dress, I'm going to do in the other dress. So pick up my medium, my paint, and we're going to start lighter on the shoulder. It has more skylight. And it comes down here. Well, I got the value right. I know you can't see me, but every time I put a stroke like that down, I'm stepping back. Because it's the only way I can see if it's too bright, too strong, too colorful, one of the above. I cannot tell up close. Up close, I may think it looks good. And when I get away, I may think, whoops, made a mistake. And I have made many mistakes. But right now, we're just plowing along here, assuming I'm right and knowing that I might be off. Step back. Okay. It's feeling, the dress is feeling comparable, you know, kind of to what's going on here. I could probably bring another stroke down here. And that's not an unusual occurrence either, where I'll get one thing and I'll look over and go, oh, I need to add something here. We're going to get that waistband down here. And then that helped. As I stand back, this comes a little tighter down into this area. A little bit of reflected light back here. Okay, now, I guess my grandmother was a costumer. I think they call these darts. And it gives structure, gives body structure. Oh, there again, I push the. We want to lighten this in here quite a bit, because this almost goes into light here. And it will eventually. Right now it's not, but it will eventually. A little bit in here, a little bit in here. A little warmer. I'm going to add just a hint burnt sienna, and burnt sienna is darker, so I have to add white to it. When I add burnt sienna, white or ochre or some sort of a light color to lighten, because I want to get a little warmer. Nope, too light. I want to get a little bit of color of that arm reflecting back into the dress. That's what that is. So you get a hint of warm right here. And that warm extends down here. And actually, it's kind of pink. So what I did, I probably went way too far with it. I kind of like it. And the pink extends down into some of these areas, like right a little bit darker. Right about in, whoa, that's really strong. Sometimes you do it too strong, you go, that's not as bad as I thought it was. So I got to stand back. No, it's working okay. I just stood back to double check my guessing, which is probably a good word, because that's kind of what you're doing at this point, is you are guessing. Get some nice warms happening there. Not be able to go a lot further on that, but I will go a little more neutral, a little more violet right in here. Nope, almost. Let's try it again. I just need more white in it. I got the color's okay. Value could be just a little bit stronger to show off the pull. And same up here and right about there. I got a pretty good variation. A little bit more violet up, probably up on that sleeve, right about here. Okay, so we've got the lights, or some of the shadows going on, and they're okay. So now I need to pop the lights on the dress. There's a couple little areas I need to address. That area right there. Okay, let's get some lights going, because we're just lights. Don't want to over finish it. I'm going to hold off on the lights. I lied. Tell you why. No one said why, so here's why. I want to get enough of this background in, so when I put the lights in, they're going to complete the piece, okay? And right now they're not, but I do need to go back in and put that nice bright blue light. And when I sketched these up, I cinched the waist just a little bit more. Okay. So let's start in on the water. First, I'm actually going on the rocks. All right, I'm gonna go back to my big old brown brush. Brown, blue, a lot of terp, maybe a little bit of any sort of a light color, and I'm going to warm it up with a little bit of burnt sienna. And we're going to go right there. Probably about all I'm going to have a chance to do in here. Sneaks its way up, kind of in here, works its way down here, over, kind of softens up in here. Pretty harsh and dark right there. All right. So I'm going to leave that alone. That's going to brush its way up in here, soften out a little bit, and then going to bring a little bit more warm to that color. Warm meaning burnt sienna. We're going to go up behind her head a little bit. And we're going to take it up here. I'm just going to scuff these rocks up so that they feel complete. They will not be complete, but they will feel more complete. Right at the base. Probably could be cooler, but as I stand back, it felt okay. I did stand back just in case you guys want. Now I'm going to take this to bring it over. It's a little darker than I was hoping, but This is fun stuff. Look for some of the subtleties so they don't feel, I mean, I could do it like a big shape, but I'm one of these guys that likes a little bit of form, even in the distance where it's like this. I love to get a little form going. Okay, let's get that rock in. One last dark. And then at the end, I can put a few little subtleties in, but I can see it gets kind of warm right there. Let's pull that down and then get it over and down. Another right here. And a little bit dark down at the base. A little warmer. Some really beautiful cools going on in these rocks too. So hopefully we'll have a chance at the very end to go back and do a little bit of fussing on some of these areas. They bring a little cool right there. Okay. Now the rocks affect the reflection in the water, not the white water, but the water. And it has a slight green tint to it. So I'm going to add green and brown. And remember I said slight. So what we're going to do is right here, nope, not almost, going to add a little maples or a little ochre, just so I lighten it a little bit. This is the water. Be bold. I didn't have enough paint mixed up, so I'm mixing up more paint, just in case you're wondering. A little green. This time I used burnt sienna instead of the umber. This looks pretty good. Let's keep it a little too dark. So I'm bringing just a little bit of, yeah, that's good enough. It's probably not warm enough, but it's going to be warm enough for me right now. We're painting it a wet paint. So let it mush together. Don't be afraid of that. Don't fight that, in other words. And we'll do it up here a little bit lighter as it moves over. So I'm bringing a little more ochre, maybe a touch more maples into it. And we're going to bring it right here and into here, above her head. From that point, we'll bring it there. A little bit there. It's a little bolder than I wanted, but you know what? Beggars can't be choosers. And so I've got a big mold enough to just say it's good enough. And I'll make it work. Hopefully later. Kind of working with all those different colors, a little bit of green, a little bit of orange, a little bit of brown, a little bit of white. Just kind of get the activity of some of these areas going in here. A little bit along the shoreline, a little lighter, a little greener right about there. That's pretty good. Son of a gun. How did I hit that the first time? Shocked me. A little bit of warm in there. A lot of times people don't afraid to put warm in water. And there is. And I didn't do it. Let's try it again. That's better. A little bit of here. A little bit coming from here. Okay, so we're starting to get some of that water activity going on. A little warm, little instances of warm in here. Now, before I do the lights on the dress, and the last thing I'm going to be dealing with is this down here. All right, so we've got that, but I haven't put lights back in the water, which I really need to before I get the lights in the dress. So white paint into some of these colors I was using already. I just mix right into them. And it has a little bit of a cool cap, so I'm adding just a touch of Well, that's pretty good. I need a lot of medium in this paint because we're putting it on top. So it's quite fluid. I'm going to try. I don't think that's blue enough. There, I think that's better. Oh, I think that's going to be a good color. Let me see how this looks. Probably it's going to work okay. Yep. Well, that's what I'm going to deal with. A little bit. Oh, God. Shoot. That Prussian is so strong. I put a little bit in there and it just went haywire on me. How many of you guys still say haywire? There we go. A lot of them. Here it's nice and light. A little bit of light interrupting these. You can let your colors kind of go together. That's one of the things that I like doing, is letting them kind of accidentally work together. Because, you know, this, by the way, this paint at this particular moment, I'm still picking up more white. There's that much Prussian in my, more still. Okay. Be careful with Prussian or phthalo. It is a super fugitive color as far as overpowering a lot of your other paints. So we're going to kind of sneak it a little bit back in here. Over here it gets a lot more yellow in it. So I took some more Naples. I would have sworn I had a ton of white. There we go. Let me get back. Okay, that's working. And this is why I didn't want to paint the edges of that dress. Hopefully, because I knew I was going to be bringing this stuff in and kind of messing it up a little bit. So it would have just driven me crazy if I had done these perfect edges. And it didn't work. Stepping back. Okay, it's looking active enough, which is one of the things that was looking a little flat, I felt. Like it didn't have enough stuff going on. Do a little bit more. I could probably play on this area for a long time. But it's starting to, as I'm standing back, hopefully it's looking good for you guys. If it doesn't, sorry. But as I stand back, it's working the way that I was hoping it would. So it just took me a while to get to it. Some big simple areas and some little picky areas. So we want that combination. Little fuss there, a little like right here, down by the hands. And this, you could use this to kind of go back. A little interesting, it gets a little bluer over here. So I've got two sides of this color mixed up. One that has a little more blue in it and one that's got a little bit more yellow. And I'm going back to that kind of blue side now. A little bit, not a lot, but just a little. And I can take the deeper blue and come back into those areas, even up in here. So I take the deeper blue, the color that's got a little bit more blue in it, and I bring it right, I'm probably cut in front of you now, but I'm just let it tickle. So it gets a little bluer back there. Okay. Let's get into the whites of the dresses. Then we're going to go down into the ground plane. Yeah, I've got about 20 minutes. So I know I'm going to go over. I just don't know how much I'm going to go over. And I blame it on the scale. Always have a reason. When it doesn't come out the way you want, I always say, have your excuses ready. Well, it would have worked better if the sun had stayed out longer. Would have worked better if the model would have held still. You know, there's always a reason. Always a reason. Would have worked better if I was a better painter. Okay, so it looks, you know, it's interesting. It looks complete. Is it complete? No, but it's abbreviated. Oranges, warm colors, ochres down in here. Because what happens in the water when it gets down near this, it kicks the sand up, and you get a lot of beautiful warm colors happening in areas like this. I can see it there. I can see it, and you can decide how far you want to push that. A little bit right in here. If you only put it in one spot is where it will look wrong. It's got to be complete enough. So let's get the lights of the dresses in, then we'll get the ground plane, and then hopefully I'll have time to go back and make it look good. Because that is the goal in the long run. Okay. I'm going to leave that brush alone for a little bit. I think I am going to go back to this brush. And we'll clean it off. And this brush is a number 8. It's a number 8 rosemary flat. All right. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on the whites of the dresses, a little bit of the hair. This is going to be the fun part. Don't want to have too much fun right now. I want to work a little bit. So I took this blue. I like that blue better than the blue I had in there. Okay. So what am I going to do with those? I'm going to take white. And I've got most of my whites already contaminated with the blue. So I'm going to probably squeeze a bunch more out right here. And mix it with a palette knife with a little Naples. Naples will make it white. Will make it warm. And I want to be pretty free with it. That's why I'm mixing the two together. A little bit more. Now, if I had a cad orange, add just a hint of cad orange. If I had a cad yellow deep, that would work probably even better. But this works. It's going to work fine. I am going to need. Here it is. Let me test this color here. That's it. That's what we want. Okay. I haven't put any medium in it. Maybe I should squeeze a little medium into that paint so it flows better. And I've done that a lot of times where I'll mix up a puddle of paint and then mix medium right into that puddle. Okay.
Puddle of paint?
Huh?
Puddle of paint?
Well, it's a pile of paint. It's a pile of paint with dimension. That's what a puddle is. Okay. So we're going to go on that right there. And softly hit that edge. It's still not loose enough, so I've added more medium. I want it to flow really without me having to press hard. That worked. Not as great as I wanted, but it worked. So I'm going to, between that and moving over to the cooler, slightly more aqua. Okay. It's almost the color I was using in the water. Because as it goes down into this area, it is not receiving as bright of a bright light. But on the top shoulder, it is. And then we'll fade it into that other paint. So that's working. Now you can see the amplification, I'm hoping, from what I have done from the way the photo is. So you do see big, and I got it to read better because of value contrast. So we're going to stay with that same kind of color. And we're going to go right down. And it's going to move up into the aquas as we come up here. So we want to start right where the hand is. And then it moves into that kind of aqua color. So we just pick that up. And I want you to keep leaning against my palette. And we'll go back. Okay. You want to do this with as less pressure and effort as you possibly can, because you don't want it to overlap. You don't want it to look like you just sat there and worked as hard as could be to make it work. You want it to feel, like I said, I shouldn't say you, because you may have a different character that you're after. I want it to feel like it just kind of fell off the brush. Like the artist did not have to work hard to get it to do what they wanted to. And since we brought up Sorolla, that's what I love about his work. Is it looks like magic. And as much as I admire photorealism to me doesn't look like magic. Photorealism looks like hard work. Like, man, that artist had to just work and work and work to get it to go. Boy, that's certainly, I don't mean anything to diminish it, because it just takes patience and skill. Because there's a certain amount of skill in learning how to hide your brushwork and not make it look like you overfussed it. And we're going to go back and put, there we go. Okay, that's almost working. Go a little lighter right here. Okay, let's get the other dress in. Yeah, you know what? If I hadn't talked so much in the beginning, I probably could have been really close to my 90-minute goal I usually set for myself. But this is more of the aqua, because it's really light and then it fades. And get a little bit as the light turns on the outfit is where we get all these changes. So every time I put a stroke down, you guys are unable to see, but I am stepping back. I'd probably step back. Oh, in this painting so far, my guess, what do you think? 30 times, I guess.
Okay.
I'm almost the right color up in here. I'm not the right color. I just said almost. By the way, as long as I'm talking to you guys, if anyone happens to be interested, next week I will be doing week 101. I have no idea what I'm going to do yet, but I'll be doing it from Santa Barbara. So if any of you are in the Santa Barbara area, I will be out in front of the Waterhouse Gallery at this particular time, and you were invited and welcome to come by and watch in person and give me comments and ask me questions and hang out afterwards and talk and do whatever. And we'll go really be a little more careful. Whoa, nice. I love that thick paint. I don't know if I want it there because it's the only place I have it. But man, if I had it in other places, I'd leave it for sure. And we want that blending into that aqua color right at this point. Stay with as big a brush as long as you can. You will be more satisfied. But up close, you're going to go, oh, I don't know if I like it, but you've got to keep stepping back. You've got to keep stepping back. You cannot stay on top of your painting. A little more aqua. Start to amplify the pulls right in here, there, on there, the way it comes in here, down to the, I'm standing back. I see it right, see I'm warmer. So I add a little bit warmth to that color, but I see a couple of pulls in that aqua range right about there. So we're looking for the action. We're looking for the movement of the garment. The garment moves according to the way the body moves. So it flows away from the body, and then it flows, it hugs the body. When it hugs the body, it makes a different kind of mark, different kind of paint mark. When it moves away, it's freer, it's more billowing, and you want to kind of get the combination of all that. That's what makes a paint. That's looser clothing. Tight clothing doesn't have that. Tight clothing doesn't have that, the flow that looser clothing has. And white clothing will always allow you to get more color variation within the shadows, which is what I've been playing with. That's really where a good portion of the time on this painting has been devoted to, is working out whatever variations we can to get it feeling like it's moving away. For example, it's hugging near the buttocks, it's hugging on the shoulders, but it's flowing away as it moves away from the body. So you want to get all of those characteristics in. If you do, the cloth figure painting is one of the wonderful. I don't think enough people appreciate it, but that's just my feeling. But that's one of the things about cloth figure painting, truthfully, is to be able to paint the garment where it hugs the body and where it pulls away from the body. So you have all these different kind of folds. We have what I call compression folds, bunches up, like this is kind of a compression. Then we have gravity folds where it just hangs, like just hanging right in here. Then we have tension folds where it pulls against something. In this case, the tension would be the hand, and the hand forcing that. So we get all these wonderful kinds of folds, and getting them in the right spot just takes practice. It's not outrageously difficult. It just takes a lot of practice and analyzation. But I could say that about any form of painting that we're talking about. Okay, let's get a little bit of the ground plane. Let's go. Let's get the hair in. Yeah, I'll be about 15 minutes over, just because I got to get the ground plane in, and I want to get a little of the rocks in. Hair is looking okay, but we want to get a little bit of the lights in the hair now. So I've got somewhere here. Here it is. I love using my big filberts for these filberts. Eggbirds. So we're going to take the top of the hair, make it kind of a greenish color, because I see a lot of sky influence, particularly if the hair got a little wet. So this is an exaggeration. I'm going to take a little bit of ochre into that color. So it isn't quite, it's a little warmer. There we go. And it's going to go right there. Wow. Step back and I went, okay, it worked. Oh, that's a relief. You can take more ochre. I want to go a little darker as it goes down the side. Still, right about in here. A little lighter. It's not. And then it fades up in here. So we get the right feeling of the hair. Now as it comes over to the other side, that's too light. So we push it back 2 or 3 times and it goes right back into that color. A little bit there. Now we start to get the warmth. So we're gonna go more of the ochre, and I even add just a touch of the cat orange hue and a little bit of maples. That's actually pretty good. And what it'll allow me to do is go one stage lighter. Really light now. All this same kind of light that I was using on the dresses with maybe a little bit more of the Naples thrown into it. We're gonna go really light right here. I'm gonna soften that edge. I like the lightness, I don't like the edges. But we'll see what we can do. Gonna bring more ochre into it. As it comes down. A little bit of cat orange if it enhance the warmth a little bit more. Probably could have used a burnt sienna instead, but down there. And as it goes onto her dress, maybe a little bit here, and I want to get some of that dress color back up. Picked up a little bit of light that I don't like. Okay. And some of it that I'm not happy with. A little bit of brush, spirit. We're going to leave it alone. Just don't have time to do much more right now. Let's go into her flesh. Flesh is very similar to the dress color, but warmer. So I can take the dress color and just add a little bit of a burnt sienna to it. And I'm going to try it right now, see how it works. A little bit more. I think I just went too far with it. Let's try it again. Soften the inner edge. Keep the outer edge a little more crisp if you can. Now, if something happens. What happens is the values match, but you can go in with a darker watercolor, which you already have mixed up somewhere, and just define the edge of the arm a little bit more. So we're going to go down there. We're going to go down where her hand is. Probably going to mess it up a little bit when we do the background. This is okay on her face. Right here is where that light's coming in and starting to affect her face. Right there. And then it fades. It's not over into here. So we get a little light on her neck, and we see a little bit of warmth right there, and then on the side of her face, a little bit more. Well, not quite. Let's go a little bit there. Let's try that. I don't know if I like it, but right now I'm not going to over worry about it. The ear, all the back behind the ear always gets dark and warm. So we're going to go right there. And then the ear itself is always a warmer version of the flesh tone. So I just took burnt sienna, mixed it in, and we're going to put that ear in right there. Okay. Now, where else? I see a couple other little warms I want to add. And then we'll get right down here and go up in here and probably have it close to done. A little bit of warm reflection back in this arm. And do I see any in the other arm? Yes, I see a little bit right here. But it's time to look for it. And that's part of the key, you guys, is knowing when to do this stuff. Now, feet, I'm going to be fine with once I get the background ground in. So what do I want to do? I'm going to mix up a color similar to that watercolor with a little more Naples in it, a little ultramarine, and I'm using a knife. You might be able to even see this on screen. I don't know. You can? Good. Now we're going to test it. First thing I'm going to do is test it. That's okay. It's a little, I want it a little warmer, so I'm going to add more ochre because I'm out of Naples. Or I actually have more Naples right here. So let's try it. Squeeze some Naples out right there. Okay. And I want a little medium in that. Here's what I was doing earlier. I'm going to squeeze my solvent-free gel right on top of it and mix that right into it. And then we'll go, that's going to work. Okay. You can see it's pretty, I need to loosen it up with probably a little bit of turp and a little bit of my, what do you call it? Safflower. So we're going to stay with that right now. Maybe bring just a little bit of cat orange hue into it. I threw a little extra ultramarine into it right there. Felt like it was a little bit on the warm side, but I want warm. I want warm and I want cool. So it's pretty thick paint. So it goes darker as it moves to the left. So let's get the right done while we've got this color mixed up. I want it darken a little bit as it comes next to her dress. And for that, I just adding a little brown. We step back for a second. It's okay. I think I could probably improve it, but right now we don't have time. If I have time at the very end, I'll put a couple of, we're going to clean up here. Got to get that edge of that water in. It's going to be a little dark and a little light. So we want to get this negative space in, the billowing of that dress. You can see I've a little bit of that burnt sienna's coming out, which I kind of like. Almost wish I had a little bit more of that happening, like right, say here. And you can go back and pick up some of the other colors that you've used. I always like integrating colors that happen in the painting into all areas of the painting. I just think it starts to make your painting hold together. Now we're going to go darker as we go to the left. So I just took some ultramarine and mixed it in, and we're going to start. That's not warm enough. So what I do, throw some burnt sienna. Feels better. And we're going to get some of these dark warms going on in this area. Bottom of the water. Here. Okay, it's working. Get a little bit more light right here, back. A little bit down by her leg to help define her leg. So we clean that leg up right now. If I have to destroy part of it, I will, and I'll just come back in at the very end, neaten it up. Stand back. Looks okay. A little bit lighter there. A little bit as it goes down. Whoops, too light. Gotta put light on the legs. The last thing we're gonna do, probably. Okay, let's see what we can get done in the next 10 minutes here. There, a little bit more blue in it. Get that in, that in. Okay, it's kind of holding together. I have to keep, I step back. That's probably the other thing that's taking a little bit of time. I'm stepping back an awful lot. Simply because I have to. I don't trust myself on my judgments when I'm painting up close. It's a little dirtier. And I'm using that word, and slightly warmer now that I look at it too. Right as we move down, warmer still, more burnt sienna, a little bit of ultramarine blue into the burnt sienna. We're gonna go darker still, more of the asphaltum. We're gonna work our way down. And I'm gonna move this back. So I still want to go a little darker. Asphaltum, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. Same color. A little bit more blue in it. I'm just reacting to what I see. Okay, it's gonna lighten up a little bit and warm up as we get over to about here. All right, so we're gonna get the kind of reflective qualities in, and they tend to be slightly warm, a little bit violet. And we're gonna start about here. That looks pretty good. More asphaltum, or excuse me, I added some cad orange hue. Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna throw that a little bit further, exaggerate a little bit more. There, and off here. And when it comes down from the foot, it's gonna be right here. It's not that different than painting reflections in canals. When I painted those, it's really not. The thinking is the same. Free, kind of a little bit of an abstracted aspect to it. And let's go on the other. Get a little bit of a pull right here, and then it's quite dark at that 1 foot. So add a little bit of brown, a little bit of blue, get pretty darn dark right about here. We'll almost lose what it is, and we have some of that dark working its way down as we get down in here. And then, hey, here Murphy. Murphy is upset because he normally knows I finish at 1:30, and he's not happy with us right now. That's a little too blue. So take cad orange hue, mix it right into it, come back right on top of it. Just push them together. Push them together. Down around in here. And we'll take that, and a little bit off the foot. Okay, now let's get the rest of the light ground in. So we go back to the colors I was using. It's a little bluer as it comes down here. So I want to make sure to do that up in here. I like doing this kind of stuff right here. You feel like, I don't know, You feel like you're a real painter. You start pushing paint around. Just push it around. Different kind of discipline. You have to feel good about edges you're creating while still maintaining the semblance of some sort of realism. Easier said than done. Okay, let's get that big area right there. So I put a little more turp into it so I can move it around faster. And we're gonna go right here. Probably should be using a bigger brush. Okay, a little more blue and get enough of this stuff laid in where at least it feels complete, whether it is or not. At some points you almost don't want to worry about how 100% accurate you are with your reference. You just want it to feel, people look at your painting, they don't look at your reference. All right. So look at your painting. If it looks good and it doesn't feel exactly like your reference, you're the only one that knows that. I'm not telling. Little light on the legs, a little edge of the water, and go into the rocks just for a second, and we'll be done. So we're going to do a little light on the legs, but warmer. Particularly on this light, I see it quite a bit warmer. And lighter. And the heel is pretty light. A little warmer as it goes up the side of the leg. It stood back for a second. Just, I want to see if it's working. A little warmer. A little bit grayer and warmer kind of at the same time, right about in here. And then on the edge of the foot, a little bit lighter. And we let it get lost down into what's happening down there. Probably could clean up that part of the dress. And on the other legs, a little bit duller, right about here. Soften it. Bring it down. Soften it in. Emphasize the Achilles. Down there, that foot. Foot kind of disappears in the sand. The other foot, very bright. More like the whites on the dress. Back here, quite red as it goes towards her heel. So I just took the cat orange, put it right there. Went back with the white. Define the Achilles and the edge of that leg.
We're past
And we'll leave it what?
147, just so you know.
Okay. I am going to do a couple little things, and one of them is going to be adding a little bit of work right in that water, which I'm going to do right now with the white. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of the what we call foam. Went right into the dress. Be careful. And on the edge, here, here. We got enough. That's all I'm going to get into that. Last thing I'm going to do is the rocks. Just get a little bit more believability. Got some cool happening up in there, so I'm just going to add blue with kind of a color I already have mixed up. See what that, oh, that's just about right. So we're going to add some cool right up in here. Skylight. A little bit here. Kind of comes down a little bit on the top of that rock. As it comes down from here. Over. Scuff it down. Back in here. I'm just about done. I'm going to stand back for a second. Yeah, it's working okay. It's a little sloppier than I want, but time tells me that you leave sloppy. See, one thing about sloppy, you can just call it loose. Oh, it's just a loose painting. It's not a sloppy painting. Of course, loose can be real sloppy at times. And you can build these rocks as much as you want. I wouldn't, simply due to the fact that they're a background element. So I want them to feel, I don't want them to feel like they've been totally neglected and they would just put in 6 paint strokes and called it a rock. You still want a little bit of believability there, you know, a little bit of form and color variation that you might see. So any of that stuff you can kind of put in at the end. You can always go back and clean it up. Let me step back for 1 second. That's pretty much what I'm going to have to end up calling complete for today, simply due to the fact that time's up and I've kept you away from much more important things than watching me paint. And for those of you that hung in there with me, I appreciate it. To those of you guys that have literally watched several of these, I'm really humbled by the simple fact that you guys, you know, enjoy and it's the reason I kind of keep doing them. So with that in mind, Anna's been my right hand here. Most of you guys know. So I should thank her for the last 40 years. Not just but for at least the last, you know, 100 weeks that we've been doing this. I mean, she can't always be here. Sometimes she's not. Scott has been a trooper, comes in and gives us suggestions and handles a lot of the problems that occur. And all of you guys that paint and all of your comments are so greatly appreciated. I can't express it. So there you have kind of a very quick 30 by 40, parts of which work okay. You know, it's like in other parts, I could go back and fuss on them. Who knows? I'll probably do a little bit like I always do. I'll probably put 15 minutes in. Now you can see what a mess I look like at the end. All right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Scott.